Hey guys, how's it going? In this video, I want to talk to you all about webinars. Now, you might have heard that webinars are a good way to make money, right? But how do you actually use webinars, and how do you go about running a webinar? And when you run your own webinar or someone else's webinar, how do you make money from them, right? So in this video, what I wanted to talk to you about was how you can get started with understanding how you run an effective webinar and make money from it, right? Because there's a number of different ways that you've probably heard from different people about how it works and how you do it and how you make money, right? But in this video, I'm going to share with you how you can go about doing it in a proven method that a lot of digital marketers and just anyone who runs them and who's successful at running webinars, how they actually go about doing it, right? Okay, so I believe that there's a number of steps to running an effective webinar, right? But if I had to break it down to three basic principles, I would say these are the three principles I'm going to share with you today, right? So let's get stuck in, okay? So what is the first part of running a webinar, right? So the first part is something that is called storytelling, okay? Now, storytelling is the effective way of presenting the main points within your webinar, right? So if you have let's say we have our offer that we're going to offer them at the end, right? That's where we're going to make our money. But to build up to that, right, we have to engage our audience. You have to warm them up, and we basically have to get them to a point where they're going to feel happy and they're going to feel that what we're talking about is relevant to them, okay, and engaging to them. And the way we do that, and the way that we make our leads and users on a webinar feel engaged and for them to enjoy the whole process, is through storytelling, okay? So, but you want to make sure that obviously the stories that you share within your webinar are authentic and they're original and they're 100% true, because that will emit trust and influence from your part, and it's unbelievable how powerful that is. So no matter how small your story might be, or you might feel it might be, right, storytelling is very powerful when it comes to webinars, right? And so that starts, you want to start your webinar off by saying, to make this work, we are going to say that we are selling a product at the end for $197, right? Let's say it's a course with some special training that's involved in there as well. Maybe like access to an online community or whatever it is, right? Whatever your products are. So we've now got people on the webinar, right? And we're running the webinar. So we know that we want to sell our offer for $197, right? Now the first thing is, we have to bridge our first part, the part when people land on our webinar, and convert them to the offer. Now, how effective do you think it is if they landed on the first part of our webinar and we said within 1 minute we said, "Hi, welcome to our webinar, and we just wanted to share with you a story. Somebody bought our product for $197 and they've done well ever since then," right? It's not going to work, is it, right? Because your conversion rate is going to tank massively, right? And it's going to bottom out, and your whole webinar is going to just bottom out there, right? So the whole point is, right, you've got to start to talk about, like, from a wide angle, the problem that this is going to solve. So you're almost in their head creating awareness. You start talking about what your product is going to solve for them effectively, right? So it's making that awareness, creating that awareness in their head that there is a need for them to buy our product, right? So the way you would do that is you would talk about whatever product it is. Let's say it could be anything, but the more specific it is, the easier it is to sell through the storytelling process, right? Because then you can hone your storytelling skills and relevance into that story, right? Or to do with that angle that we're selling. So let's assume, right, I always give an example because I feel like it helps me to get my point across here. So let's assume that you're selling, like with summer coming up, let's say we're selling, I don't know, some kind of, I would say that, I don't know, let's say we're going to be selling them a course on how to get their, I don't know, let's say our target audience who's on our webinar is somebody who's got serviced apartments, and we're going to show them how to, on a budget, transform their small garden into a space where it'll be good for summer and other people can use it. So their tenants, it's attractive, it's low maintenance, and and that's what that's going to solve. So in our storytelling, we basically want to start telling people that, when you're starting out with serviced apartments, so our is serviced apartments, and then you want to talk about whatever the relevant points are to do with serviced apartments, but then you bring in, you can talk about how powerful it is to run a serviced apartment business, having multiple different apartments. But have you ever come across one big problem, which is the garden? Because sometimes you don't even do anything about the garden, but when you do something about the garden, it takes too much maintenance, or there's too much cost involved, or your reviews tank because in summer you've got the space, but you don't want to get a landscaper in because then they're going to try and tell you on maintenance and all this sort of stuff. So then that's what you start talking about in the storytelling bit. So you build the story up and you talk about the big picture, and then while you're talking about this, about halfway through the webinar, so they say a webinar should be about 45 minutes to an hour, what you want to start doing is about at the beginning, so about 10 minutes into it and about 30 minutes into it, right, about halfway, you want to do what is called seeding, right? And what that means is it's where you start talking, or you mention your product. So the first time is you mention it, right? So at the 10 minutes, you mention it. So you say, one of the biggest problems within the service space apartments for landlords is the fact that when gardens are not maintained, which is exactly what our serviced apartment landscape garden for under $500 is going to solve, then we talk about how important it is and the main things that you need to be aware of, and how you can still stay legal and safe so your tenants can't complain or put a lawsuit against you if they trip over or something, blah blah blah, right? So the point is, you start and you only mention it, right? You don't need to go into, because that way, while they're listening to that story and then you talk about it, it goes in their brain and they remember it. Then further down, about halfway through, a bit more, then you start talking about it. So you say, 2 or 3 of the points that we cover in our guide of serviced apartments, landscape gardening thing for under $300, or whatever it is that we talked about, you start mentioning it, right? And then by the time we get to the offer, to the last 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how you run your offer, what you're going to start doing then is literally, it's good if you can give a discount. So let's say initially your product is $249 or something, and then you give them a special discount of $197. Then when it comes to selling, it becomes very easy, because storytelling and then the seeding part of running that effective webinar has allowed us to, by the time it comes to selling it, you've already mentioned it through the storytelling process. The storytelling gives you structure and a framework for your webinar, right? And depending on whatever you want to sell or cross-sell different products, you mention them in your story, right? Just like we did with the seeding stuff. And then when it comes to the offer, it becomes like a no-brainer for our leads, because we're literally saying, look, the value, we're going to talk to you about how you can save we're talking about how you're going to save create a garden for under 500, and they might think, well, I've been quoted 2,000, you know, by a gardener or whatever, but I can get it done for under 500, where I'm saving 1,500. And you can even talk about that here. You could say the average garden will cost you about 2,000 for most serviced apartments, right? To get a nice finish, to get it all landscaped and looking good and to a point where it looks good. But we'll show you methods and techniques that we've used, and it becomes, you know, for 3 years or 5 years, you don't have to worry about it, and it's just a one-off cost, and you'll get your money back and blah, 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 whatever your sales pitch is, right? But the fact is, you've been mentioning it all along, and that's how you make money, and that's how you run webinars in an effective way. I hope this video has helped, guys. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe below, and we will be talking about more webinar stuff in the next videos to come. So for the time being, take care.